with the anterior triangle dissection. So we have done the deep fascia investing layer, that how it invests the two muscles, two glands, and circumferential in the whole of the neck. So in the next deep dissection of the anterior triangle, so first we have done the skin of the anterior triangle dissection, we have removed it. Second, we have seen the structures in the superficial fascia of the anterior triangle. Then we have seen the deep cervical fascia. After the removal of the deep cervical fascia, what do you expect? What is the fourth layer of the human body? So this is the deep fascia. The same diagram. Now you have to make on the third page this new diagram. After the deep fascia reflection, skin reflection, what do you expect the fourth layer of the human body? Below the deep fascia is what is the fourth layer of the human body? From head to toe, cut the skin, superficial fascia, deep fascia, then muscles. Very right. So now we will expecting the muscles present in the anterior triangle. So muscles in the anterior triangle, they are divided into two groups, suprahyoid and the infrahyoid muscles, because of the presence of a U-shaped bone that is called the hyoid bone. So it has the parts, they are the greater cornu, lesser cornu, centrally the body of the hyoid bone. So if you bring your finger from the middle of the chin downward, here you feel a bone, feel your own. So it is quite deep in position, so this is the hyoid bone. Just below the hyoid bone you feel the thyroid cartilage. So between the chin and the thyroid cartilage upper border, you feel the hyoid bone with the center. So, and below the hyoid bone, there lies the thyroid cartilage, the part of the larynx, the voice box, with oblique line on it. And this is the prominence that is called the Adam's apple. So it in the male it is more prominent, in the female it is less prominent. So this is the how thyroid cartilage having the two laminas, having the oblique line on it, and this is the prominence that is called the Adam's apple. So this is like the V-shaped structure. So just below the thyroid cartilage there is a ring-shaped cricoid cartilage, and below the cricoid cartilage here lies the windpipe that is called the trachea, with the C-shaped tracheal rings, which are only present anteriorly, laterally, but they are not present posteriorly, they are deficient. So presence of the cartilaginous rings make the windpipe or the trachea non-collapsible pipe. So nobody can easily press it, or whenever the neck is in any position, our trachea remains open. So there is no obstruction in the inspiration and the expiration. So that is why it has been provided with the C shape. anterior and lateral cartilaginous ring. It is deficient posteriorly. Why posteriorly? Because posterior lies the esophagus. During the deglutition, the esophagus expands. So there is an absence of cartilage on the posterior surface of the trachea. If there would have been cartilage here, how the esophagus can expand? This is the reason why it is only U-shape, anteriorly and laterally, and deficient posteriorly. And the gap between the thyroid cartilage, upper border, and the hyoid bone is closed by a membrane which is called the thyrohyoid membrane. Thyrohyoid membrane. So make this diagram on the third page, full page, because the question may come, draw and label the midline structures of the neck, then you have to make this diagram. Midline structures of the neck, starting from chin up to the sternal notch. So this diagram is very, very important, again, for your examination point of view. This is called the thyrohyoid membrane, and always remember, this membrane is pierced by three structures: a artery, a vein, and a nerve. So name of the artery is the internal laryngeal artery. The same corresponding vein, internal laryngeal vein, and nerve is the called internal laryngeal nerve. So nerve is the internal laryngeal, and artery and vein, they are the superior laryngeal artery and superior laryngeal vein. Always three structures, they pierce, they go into the larynx inside. So always remember, thyrohyoid membrane pierced by three structures. So muscles, they lie above the hyoid bone, they are called the suprahyoid muscles. And they are 4 in number. Similarly, they are infrahyoid muscles. They are also 4. So both supra and the infrahyoid muscles, there we will see in the dissection after removing the skin and the fascia. 4 muscles. Now above here is the mandible. The body, the ramus is the vertical part, and inside the body of the mandible, here lies a oblique line that is called the mylohyoid line. Dotted means it is on the medial surface of the mandible body, mylohyoid line. And just below the mylohyoid line there is a fossa that is called submandibular fossa. And above the line there is a sublingual fossa, and just above the chin there is a small diagastric fossa, and inside there are the 2 pairs of genial tubercles in the midline on either side of symphysis mentae, superior and inferior genial tubercles. So you have to study the mandible very closely. Its medial surface has got many features, and it is only possible when the mandible is every time on your study table. Skull and mandible and all vertebra should be on your study table while you are doing the head and neck. Then you can understand what is head and neck. Without bones, there is no fun of reading the anatomy. And you have to mark every muscle, origin, insertion, small or large, because we may ask you in the practical. And mandible is touched by the 7 nerves. Some are sensory, some are motor. And where the 7 nerves touches the mandible, if that part of mandible is fractured, so patient come with the complaint of, if it is sensory loss of skin, S for S. If that nerve is damaged because of the fracture of the mandible, the motor nerve, patient come with the M for M, the paralysis of the particular muscle. So this you have to, Viva in the question we will ask you what are these, take this chalk and mark these 7 points where the nerve touches. And any nerve we can ask about its applied anatomy if that part of the mandible is fractured. So be prepared for Viva like this. So we have distributed you the Viva questions for the substages now. So prepare those questions. Not only those questions, more than those. So they are the only basics question you have been, I think you have provided by your CR. Everybody is having the questions of the day after tomorrow substage. So prepare them. If any question is unanswerable, ask your table teacher in the morning or in your SGD classes. So the muscles, they are mylohyoid, suprahyoid muscle. They are mylohyoid. Then the anterior belly of digastric. It is suprahyoid muscle. Then stylohyoid muscle. Then gynoid. So these are the 4 muscles you will see taking origin and inserting on the hyoid bone. So names are suggestive. Mylohyoid means it takes origin from mandible and inserted on the hyoid bone. And digastric, so it will take origin from the digastric fossa. Stylohyoid, it will take origin from the styloid process and inserted on the hyoid bone. Gynoid, it will take origin from inferior genial tubercle and it will be inserted on the hyoid bone. So this hyoid bone is fixed in the position, we can't change it because of a ligament which comes from the styloid process and near the lesser cornu it bifurcates into 2 parts and then insert on the hyoid bone. This ligament is stylohyoid ligament. Same name of the muscle and the ligament. Stylohyoid, so it doesn't attach singly but bifurcates, then attach to the lesser cornu of the hyoid. And why it is so? Just see. The muscle from the inferior genial tubercle takes origin and it comes down and it is inserted on the base of the lesser cornu in a U-shaped manner. This is called the gynoid muscle. Gynoid muscle. This is the deepest of all the 4 suprahyoid muscles. This is the deep in position. Gynoid. Stylohyoid, it will take origin from the styloid process, come with the stylohyoid ligament and inserted over the lesser cornu. Stylohyoid ligament. Then come the mylohyoid. So mylohyoid will take from the mylohyoid line. So this is the mylohyoid line, start near the upper border of the mandible and it ends here in the lower border of the mandible, near the angle of the mandible. So the lowermost fibers of the mylohyoid muscle, lowermost, they take origin and they come down and inserted over the body of the hyoid bone. Body of the hyoid bone on its anterior surface, like this. Then up to here, about half of the mylohyoid line fibers, they get access to the hyoid bone. The upper fibers taken origin from the anterior end, they also take origin mylohyoid, but they cannot reach the hyoid bone. They are not inserted on the hyoid bone. So right and left mylohyoid muscles, uppermost, same is from here. They are inserted on one another. Right meet with the left. So they decussate. They cross in the midline. So they are inserted over each other. So they form a sheet like below from the angle of the mandible up to the chin and the hyoid bone. So it is a sheet like muscle, mylohyoid. So it is also called the diaphragm. So there are so many diaphragms. One is in the iris, other is the thoracoabdominal, one is the diaphragm of the oral cavity. So they decussate from right and left. Only lowermost fibers they get access to the bony insertion. Then on this there lies the digastric muscle, the anterior belly of digastric, on the surface of mylohyoid. So digastric is superficial, gynohyoid is deep muscle. So anterior belly of the digastric and posterior belly of digastric will take origin from medial surface of mastoid process is the origin of posterior belly of digastric. Dia means two. And their tendon is intermediate. So insertion is one on the another. So this is the digastric muscle like the omohyoid muscle we have done. Superior and the inferior belly with the intermediate tendon. Second muscle is the digastric. So the intermediate tendon, it passes below the loop formed by the stylohyoid ligament. So this is the answer. Why stylohyoid ligament bifurcated? Because the intermediate loop has to pass through it. So when both the muscles they act, so this ligament acts as a pulley, and the intermediate tendon of digastric slide over it. Plus it gives the anchor to the digastric muscles. So digastric muscles anatomical position anterior and posterior belly is maintained by the lower end of stylohyoid ligament. That is the function. So that you should know how to draw this diagram. Whenever a question of the midline structures of the neck comes, then you have to make the suprahyoid muscles also. All four of them. Now come their nerve supply. So the first two muscles, the mylohyoid and anterior belly of digastric, has a common nerve supply, and that is the which nerve supplies it? Nerve to mylohyoid. So nerve to mylohyoid is the name of a nerve which is the branch of posterior trunk of mandibular nerve. If you remember, posterior trunk has got 3 sensory, 1 motor. Anterior trunk is opposite, 3 motor and 1 sensory. So posterior trunk has got 3 sensory. One is lingual, auriculotemporal, inferior alveolar, and only 1 motor is the nerve to mylohyoid. So this should be on your fingertips. Now half of the head neck is over. So from the inferior mylohyoid groove is coming the inferior alveolar nerve. So mylohyoid groove lies just near the, start from the lingula of the mandible, which is present near the mandibular foramen. If you put a thin wire in the mandibular foramen, that wire will come out through the mental foramen. So inside the ramus of the mandible and the body of the mandible, there is a canal which is called mandibular canal, whose upper end is called the mandibular foramen near the lingula. Lingula is a small tongue-like bony spicule, bony projection. Why it is called lingula? Again, because it looks like the tongue-like, triangular. Same lingula of the left lung you have done in the thorax. Why it is called lingula of the lung? Because it looks like tongue-like. And what is attached to the tip of this lingula? What is attached to this? A ligament. Sphenomandibular ligament. Stylomandibular is attached to the angle of the mandible. Sphenomandibular is attached to the tip of the lingula. And above, attached to the name is spheno. So it is attached to the spine of the sphenoid bone. So third is pterygomandibular raphe. So these are the three structures through which the mandible is hanging from skull. You should know how the mandible is hanging from the skull. Three suspensions: stylomandibular ligament, sphenomandibular ligament, and pterygomandibular raphe. So just near the lingula, there is a groove inside the ramus of the mandible. Always remember, mylohyoid groove is on the medial surface of the ramus and mylohyoid line is on the medial surface of body of the mandible. So you confuse all the time, most of the students. Whenever we take the practical exam, they don't know where is the groove, where is the line. So they always utter opposite of it. So every day you have to revise your mandible, skull and every attachment. Then it will be on your fingertips. Otherwise you will confuse. So this mylohyoid groove is for the, because inside the mandibular foramen, inferior alveolar nerve goes through the canal, and through this branch, before it going inside inferior alveolar, it gives a branch that is called mylohyoid, nerve to mylohyoid, which runs into the groove and it comes out here. So it lies on the superficial surface of the mylohyoid. On both the sides it supplies it. After supplying mylohyoid, it supplies the anterior belly of digastric and it ends here. So this is how it is present. The course of the nerve to mylohyoid, the branch of inferior alveolar nerve. Only one branch of posterior trunk of mandibular nerve. So after supplying mylohyoid, it supplies the anterior belly and ends. So that is the fate of nerve to mylohyoid. The stylohyoid, we have already done. Stylohyoid muscle will be supplied by which branch? Seventh nerve. We have done extracranial course of the facial nerve. As it comes out of the stylomandibular foramen, three muscles are waiting. One is the occipitalis belly, second is stylohyoid muscle, and third is posterior belly of digastric. We have done in the extracranial course of the facial nerve. So this is the genohyoid muscle. 95% students fail to answer the nerve supply of genohyoid. Underline it. Genohyoid is supplied by C1 spinal nerve. C1. Because neck is the junction where the cranial nerves are ending and the spinal nerve is taking charge of supplying the skeletal muscles. The example, we have seen the nerve supply of sternocleidomastoid and trapezius. Both are supplied by 11th nerve plus spinal nerves also. Sternocleidomastoid is supplied by 11th nerve plus C2 and C3. Trapezius is supplied by 11th nerve plus C3 and C4. So both the cranial as well as the spinal nerve from the spinal cord, they are supplying the muscles of the neck. So first muscle supplied by first ventral rami of the C1 nerve from spinal cord is genohyoid. So that you have to remember. Then come the infrahyoid muscles. So there are also four. So infrahyoid muscles, they are called ribbon muscles. If the question comes, write a short note on the ribbon muscle, don't confuse. They are asking you for the infrahyoid muscles. Short note on the infrahyoid. So they are called ribbon muscle. Why? Because their origin and insertion, the width is the same. Width of the all four muscles, they are same. That's why they call a ribbon like, they are parallel muscles. So names, they are very easy to remember. They are called the sternohyoid, sternothyroid, thyrohyoid, and omohyoid. Superior belly of omohyoid. So these are the four muscles. So names are suggestive, they are telling where they are going and from where they are taking origin. So for example, sternothyroid. So it takes origin from the sternum, and whatever is the width at the origin, same is the at the insertion. So they are inserted on the sternothyroid, means thyroid cartilage, on which oblique line. So that is the sternothyroid muscle. Then from the same oblique line, another muscle goes up, inserted over the hyoid bone. What you name it? Thyrohyoid. From thyroid cartilage, oblique line to the hyoid bone is the thyrohyoid is the name. Then sternohyoid, from the sternum to the hyoid bone. Sternohyoid. Then the omohyoid, the superior belly. And inferior belly. What is the origin of inferior belly? Of omohyoid. Again, 95% students fail to answer this question, the origin of inferior belly of omohyoid. Underline. From the suprascapular notch of scapula. We have done the upper limb. You know what is suprascapular notch and ligament, and which muscle is taking origin. A red spot we make. That is the inferior belly of omohyoid. Again, the tendon is intermediate, narrow. Superior belly, inferior belly, intermediate tendon. And here the ligament was holding the intermediate tendon of the digastric. Similar mechanism is also here. We have done in the posterior triangle, omohyoid pouch, if you remember. On the upper border of the inferior belly, the deep cervical fascia split into two laminas. Anterior lamina or anterior layer is attached to the clavicle, anterior border. The posterior lamina attached to the posterior border of lamina, clavicle. Again a space is created. This is called, like the suprasternal space, this is called the omohyoid pouch. But it doesn't have got any content. Only loose areolar tissue is there. No artery, no vein, no nothing is there. So again, this fascia, the sling or the omohyoid pouch, is keeping the intermediate tendon and two muscles in position, like digastric. So that is the importance only, the omohyoid pouch. So these are the supra and the infrared muscles. Now come their nerve supply. All the infrared muscles, they are supplied by, remember, C1, C2 and C3 spinal nerves. No cranial nerve is supplying them. Spinal cord is taking charge of supplying the four infrahyoid muscles. But their nerve supply of C1, C2, C3 is very dramatic. Because before they supply the four muscles, they form a loop or necklace that is called the ansa. Ansa means loop. Ansa cervicalis. Ansa cervicalis. All C1, C2, C3. So that you have to see what is happening. Then in front of the trachea and behind the infrahyoid muscles, there is the one endocrine gland that is called the thyroid. The thyroid means shield. it has got the isthmus, which lies against second and third tracheal ring. Again underline, second and third tracheal ring is this position of isthmus is fixed, second and third tracheal ring. So thyroid gland is also present in front of the neck of the anterior triangle. So whenever a question comes, write a short, draw and label the midline structures, then you have to make this diagram with thyroid gland including it. So these are the muscles, supra and the infrahyoid muscles with their nerve supply. What else you expect in the anterior triangle? Because muscles, they are rich in blood supply. So see how the blood supply comes. You have done the thorax. You know the clinical importance, about 10 points of the sternal angle or angle of Lewis or angle of Ludwig. What is the first importance of this sternal angle? Anybody? Second rib, always second rib is attached to the sternal angle. Second rib. Then arc of the aorta start here and arc of the aorta ends here. So it just lies behind our, below the sternal notch, and during the when you put your finger on the sternal notch, bring it in the middle. Slightly you face a raised area. This raised area is the sternal angle. Go laterally. What do you feel? Costal cartilage of second rib. So this is how to do the surface marking of the manubrium sterni, sternal angle, the second rib. Then just below it will be third, fourth. So this sternal angle is used for counting the ribs above and below. So that is the clinical importance, second clinical importance. Third is the arc of the aorta start here and arc of the aorta ends. And what are the branches of the arc of the aorta? 3 branches. On right side, right brachiocephalic, not cephalic, cephalic. Leave your plus 1 and plus 2 teachers who are the cephalic. Cephalic, no cephalic. Cephalic is the word, correct word, a medical term. And on the left side, left common carotid, and just nearby left subclavian. On right side, this will divide into right common carotid and right subclavian. So that is the difference of the right and left side. And all these 3 branches anteriorly, they are crossed by what lies anterior behind the manubrium sterni in front of these 3. Who is crossing it? Anybody? Left brachiocephalic vein. Left brachiocephalic. Because superior vena cava will form on the right side by the union of right and left brachiocephalic. So left brachiocephalic has to come on the right side. So they'll all lie in front of 3 branches of arc of the aorta, like this, horizontal. Because from here the internal jugular. So these are the branches. When we trace these branches to the anterior triangle, for example, left common carotid artery, it goes up. Similarly, right common carotid artery. So great vessels are lying in the anterior triangle, lateral to the trachea and larynx and the hide bone. So this is the common carotid artery, left. This is the right common carotid artery. Now it will bifurcate into external and internal carotid artery. 2 branches. But what is the level of bifurcation? That is the importance. Anybody, where it bifurcate into 2? At which level? At which level they bifurcate? This is a very strong viva question. Write down upper border of thyroid cartilage. This is the thyroid cartilage. This is the upper border. This is the level of bifurcation into external and internal carotid. So external carotid is medial, internal carotid is lateral. Internal carotid artery is called internal carotid artery because it will go inside the skull to form circle of Willis. This is the same artery. See the origin now, which you have done in the brain. Internal carotid artery is only made for the brain to supply. So it has got no branches in the neck before it enters the carotid canal of the Norma basilis. This carotid canal leads to foramen lacerum in the middle cranial fossa. So that is the course of internal carotid artery. The external carotid artery has got 7 branches you have done. 8. Yes. The first branch between the bifurcation is the ascending pharyngeal artery. Ascending pharyngeal is between the bifurcation. First branch. Then at the same level, the second branch is coming towards the upper pole of the thyroid gland, superior thyroid artery. Superior thyroid artery is the branch of external carotid. Then this external carotid artery goes up. The third branch arises at which level of external carotid? At the tip of greater cornu, third branch. And what is the name of third branch? Made for tongue is lingual artery. So it is a tortuous artery. The first loop of the lingual artery is here, just above the greater cornu. Then this artery goes deep to the mylohyoid muscle. This is the lingual artery. Then the external carotid artery still goes further, reaching below the mandible. It gives the fourth branch, which touches the digastric triangle, touches the submandibular gland, and enters the mandible at the junction of the lower border, anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. And this artery is tortuous, going towards the lips. Spring-like tortuous artery. Lingual artery is also tortuous. When any artery is spring-like or tortuous, this has got reason. Why lingual artery tortuous? Because tongue is a movable organ. And why is the facial artery tortuous? Because it touches the mandible and mandible moves. When we open the mouth, the artery is becoming longer. When we close, it again becomes spring-like. If there would have been straight, it would have been ruptured. So this is the reason whenever anybody asks you why the artery tortuous facial, it touches the mandible and mandible moves. Simple one-line answer. So internal carotid artery straightway goes up, while the external carotid artery is medial and bifurcation level is at the upper border of thyroid cartilage. That you have to remember. Lateral to the artery, from the anterior part of the jugular foramen we have done, is coming internal jugular vein. So vein is lateral to the internal carotid artery and common carotid artery. And this internal carotid artery, internal jugular vein meet with the left subclavian vein and right subclavian vein to form brachiocephalic vein. And right and left brachiocephalic veins unite to form superior vena cava. So this is how the venous system is there. So internal jugular vein and the artery, they are close together. And sandwiched between them is the 10th nerve, vagus. Vagus is the longest cranial nerve. Write down, longest vagus nerve. Starting from the middle part of the jugular foramen, 9th, 10th and 11th, it goes up to the stomach in the abdomen and has got so many branches in between. So vagus nerve is again a very important cranial nerve asked in the examination, very frequently. So vagus nerve is sandwiched between the them. Now both the artery and the vein and the nerve, they are wrapped in a sellotape, and that sellotape is called carotid sheath to keep them together, because venous blood has to come down due to gravity, and artery and veins, they are wrapped together so that the arterial pulsations will prevent the clotting of the blood in the vein. That's why they have been closed together. Both they are big vessels, so they are how to remember them. And near the tip of the greater cornum and the first loop of the lingual artery is always crossed by the last cranial nerve. And what is the last cranial nerve? Hypoglossal, made for tongue. So hypoglossal nerve is the last cranial nerve lying near the foramen magnum, hypoglossal canal. And just below the foramen magnum, what lies? First cervical vertebra, the atlas. And the first cranial, the spinal nerve C1 arises from upper border of the C1, upper border of the atlas. So it accompanies by the C1 fibers, they come with the hypoglossal nerve. They come with the C1 because both are very, very near anatomically, foramen magnum and upper border of the atlas. So C1 fibers, they come along with the ventral rami. Dorsal rami you have done in the suboccipital triangle. Suboccipital nerve is also C1, but that is dorsal rami. This is ventral because it is in front, anteriorly. So C1 fibers, they accompany the hypoglossal nerve because C1 nerve has to supply to form ansa cervicalis. So they are very, very thin. Hypoglossal nerve is thick nerve. So the C1 fibers say that we are very thin and poor. Please bring us to the anterior triangle. So hypoglossal nerve says, okay, you come with me. So C1 fibers, they come along with it, hypoglossal nerve. But when they reach the carotid sheath, then hypoglossal says that I am going towards the tongue to supply because tongue is very far away in the mouth. You go. Then these C1 fibers, they leave the hypoglossal nerve and they descend downward because four muscles are waiting infrahead. So when it goes downward, it is labeled as descendens hypoglossi and from the superior root of the ansa. This is the superior root of the ansa, the hypoglossal nerve, and C1 fibers accompanying it, and they come down as superior root of the ansa. But few C1 fibers, they are very naughty. They don't come. They go along with the hypoglossal. Tera picha na chodenge. So they go along with us, and hypoglossal goes towards the tongue to supply the muscles of the tongue. The C1 fibers again leave here and they supply the genoid. So this is how the C1 fibers. The nerve supply of genoid is C1. So this is how the C1 fibers they reach. To see the anatomy, see the architecture, see the engineering. Everything is very fixed. You can't change. The rest of the fibers, most of the fibers, they descend downward. They are very weak. They are very thin. They can be damaged by vigorous massage of the neck. So what is their protection? They go into the anterior wall of carotid sheath. So ansa cervical is embedded in the anterior wall of the carotid sheath, which is found by pretracheal fascia. Then what is the fate of C2 and C3? C2 and C3, they either lies lateral to the vein, C2 and C3 fibers. They are also very weak. They are not having the hypoglossal nerve like companion as C1 is having. So unity is the strength. C2 and C3, they meet together. Now they becomes thick. Plus immediately after the union, they embedded in the anterior wall of the carotid sheath, which is giving their support. So they come and they meet with the C1 fibers, they form a loop. So this loop is called ansa cervicalis. Ansa means necklace. So you wear necklace in your neck, but there are two necklaces in your anterior triangle also. God has given two necklaces. Ansa cervicalis. So the ansa cervicalis is formed here in front of the carotid sheath, and they supply all the muscles, superior belly of omohyoid, sternothyroid, sternohyoid, and all the four muscles. And from the loop, inferior belly of omohyoid is also. So this is how the ansa cervicalis supplies infrahyoid four muscles. So that is how you have to do the what is called anterior triangle, all the vessels and everything. And when you remove this artery and vein, this neurovascular bundle or carotid sheath, just behind it lies the sympathetic part of cervical chain. Sympathetic chain is there because we have done in the thorax you have done the first rib. First rib you have done, which is very important rib. What was the relation of the structure in front of the neck of first rib? If you remember, SVAN, Swan relation. What was S? Medial most sympathetic chain. This is the same sympathetic of the thoracic chain now entering into the neck. This sympathetic chain. So they are having the ascending fiber. They are already post-ganglionic in the upper four segment of the T1 to T4. Because sympathetic means thoracolumbar, lateral horn of spinal cord we have done, which is only present in the thoracic, not in the cervical part. So sympathetic supply has to go from thorax to the neck and the upper limb. So they go upward, and there are 8 cervical nerves, C1 to CH, and every nerve requires the sympathetic fibers. And this is the Swan relation, T for the T1. So they are the upper four ganglion of the cervical. They unite to form superior cervical ganglion, which is a fusiform. C1 to C4 unite to form one ganglion, which is called superior cervical ganglion. C5 and C6 unite to form middle cervical ganglion. C7 and C8 they unite to form inferior cervical ganglion. Sometime the first thoracic ganglion, sympathetic, and last inferior cervical ganglion, they meet together. They form cervicothoracic or the stellate ganglion, star shape. A large ganglion is formed by the T1 and C7 and C8. So this is the sympathetic chain. The branches from the fusiform ganglion, medially, these branches, they supply the cardiac branches. They go to the heart. Sympathetic supply to the heart. The branches, they supply the internal carotid artery, external carotid artery. With all the 8 branches of the external carotid artery, the sympathetic fibers, they reach their destination. If it is facial artery, for example, the sympathetic fibers, they go around it and they reach the wherever the branches goes. So this is how all the 8 branches, they spread over the head and neck, and sympathetic supply goes to them. Then if you trace this sympathetic chain above the superior cervical ganglion, what you see that it is going in the carotid canal. Same carotid canal through which the internal carotid artery is going into foramen lacerum. That's why this nerve from the above this cervical ganglion up to this, now this is not a sympathetic chain. Now its name changes because it is accompanying internal carotid artery. Now it is called internal carotid nerve. Underline it. Internal carotid nerve is a sympathetic chain above the superior cervical ganglion entering into the skull through the carotid canal along with the internal carotid artery. When this internal carotid artery goes into the foramen lacerum, it becomes S-shaped. This is called carotid siphon. And this internal carotid artery, after entering into the skull, it is no longer a nerve, it is divided into a plexus around the internal carotid artery. What this plexus is called? Sympathetic plexus around the internal carotid artery. This is the origin. And this internal carotid artery will be the continuation of middle cerebral artery. The diameter of the internal carotid artery is the same as the middle cerebral artery, forming the circle of Willis. So these sympathetic fibers, they reach the circle of Willis like this. This is the entry. So that you have to remember that how the sympathetic part of the cervical part goes up. So this is all about the anterior triangle structures.